We now have the opportunity to hear from leaders of our state colleges and universities about strategies to promote female success in higher education. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Janine Armstrong, Dr. Stuart Rayfield, Dr. Catherine McClellan, and Dr. Ingrid Thompson Sellers. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. How y'all feeling? Y'all had a great breakout session? Yeah, let's give these phenomenal leaders that you're about to hear and speak a major round of applause. I am Janine Armstrong, Senior Vice President, Georgia Market President for VyStar Credit Union. And I will be moderating and asking these beautiful young ladies some very thoughtful questions. Now, before we get started, I'm going to take a minute and allow them to introduce themselves before we go into the questioning. So, Dr. Stewart, please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Janine. I'm Stuart Rayfield. I currently serve as the president at Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia. We have about 8,000 students on our campus, and I'm really excited to be there. I've been the president there since June of last year, so new to the role, but not new to the institution or our system.
I'm Catherine McClellan. I'm president at Oglethorpe University and been in that role since November of last year, so also new to the role. We are in Atlanta in a suburb of Brookhaven, about 1,500 students. I'm also a wife, mother of 3 grown adult children, and my mother recently moved to the area, so that too.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ingrid Thompson Sellers, and I have the pleasure of serving as the president of Atlanta Metropolitan State College for about 13 months. Prior to that assignment, I led another institution in South Georgia as their president, and I would say I'm a part of multiple communities, a community of Caribbean folks. I'm originally from Kingston, Jamaica, and I have 2 children as well, a part of a faith-based community, and just a part of a larger community of women like yourselves here who have supported me through my journey. Thank you.
Well, I'm honored to be on the stage with these powerful women. And I heard a lot of great things about motherhood. We're going to dive into that. We're going to see how these phenomenal ladies balance that work-life balance, because that's huge, right, for us women, right? So I will get there. But before we go there, yeah, I'm going to bring the house up. We're going to bring the energy up for these questions. What unique challenges, and anyone could speak first, what unique challenges do women face in pursuing leadership roles within higher education institutions?
I'd like to go ahead and take that one, if I may.
Yes, please.
I think in my experience and what I've seen, and amongst the women that I have the distinct pleasure of being with that have leadership roles in higher education, most of the folks talk about balancing family and work. And that speaks to the fact that, most women are working because they have to. They're a part of a 2-income household, and, the family depends on their resources also. And we do a good job in higher education, very, very good job of supporting our students, seeking out federal resources for students. But when we look at our employees, I don't know that we do enough to support them. So that's what I would say is the number one, based on my lens and my experience, challenge for women in higher education.
In addition to that, I think we were talking at lunch a little bit. Both Stuart and I are the first women presidents of our universities.
Okay, we got to give up to that.
No.
Let's give it up to that. The first.
Chime in when you want. There's a privilege with that. There's also pressure.
Yes.
And so we get asked, what does it feel like to be the first woman president? We both agree, I don't know. I've never been. And so I think there is the pressure to represent for all womankind, and a lot of you feel that for different communities as well. There's also what I call the whiplash syndrome, where I will get complimented at the beginning of a sentence for something about the position that anyone would do, and then told I look really nice for a president. And, you know, and just the whiplash back and forth of, and the figuring out where do you respond, where do you don't, that gets a little bit draining.
I think if we look at higher education in general, right now our student population is majority female. At our institution, the employees are majority female. But when I look at my leadership cabinet, only 30% of my leadership cabinet is female. And so I think we do a good job. Part of our role as institutions of higher education is to prepare all students for whatever their next is going to be. And I think by virtue of the fact that we are enrolling more women than we are our male counterparts, I think we're really getting into a situation when we talk about the pipeline earlier today, that we're helping to produce that pipeline. And I think they're seeing, you know, women in leadership roles throughout our campus, but not to the extent that we probably ought to be seeing them. So during the McKinsey presentation, I was running all the metrics on my own leadership team. And so I think higher education has a unique position to be able to really launch women into leadership positions through education, but also a responsibility to be able to reflect what we want to see in the world.
Thank you. That was so important for you to share some of your experiences. And Dr. Catherine, what did you state? The whiplash? What was it?
Yeah, the whiplash effect.
Yeah, you know, you're president, right? And then we have to state, but you look good to be a president. What does that mean, right? She's a president. That's it. I doubt that our male counterparts get that question. I'm sure they don't, right? So
I've never heard. I don't know.
Oh, but okay, another question. What strategies have you found effective in navigating your career path as a woman, particularly in your field, where women are underrepresented? Anyone?
I'll start.
Okay.
I think I have been very, very fortunate in my career. I can name the times when I have felt my gender very specifically. And those have been few and far between for me, and especially in our industry. Higher education, as I mentioned just a second ago, does have a good critical mass of women who are at the institution, who are in leadership roles. But I was also very fortunate that I grew up with a mother and a grandmother who were very strong women who made their own place in this world. And so I haven't known anything different. So the way that I have managed to navigate some of that has been to really reflect on what the conversations are as we're having them, and how to redirect conversations when I feel like we're going into territory where my gender is becoming an issue. And I said to Catherine when we were talking at lunch, you know, I feel very fortunate that maybe in some cases I've been oblivious. I love to work. I really, really love to work. And so that has always been the driver and the focus of what I'm doing, because I love what I do. And so I have not always felt my gender in the same ways that I know many of you in this room have felt over the course of your lifetime.
Thank you. Anybody else want to take the question?
Yeah, I really resonated with the conversation over lunch and the idea of the broken rung. I can think of a couple of times where I raised my own hand. I nominated myself and didn't wait for somebody else to do it. And I think if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am today. And it happened relatively early on. So I think it's really important that early on, if you know you want to progress in your field, take the initiative or find someone who will champion you, and we can talk more about that, so that you get higher up the ladder as quickly as you can.
I think for me, I have a passion for learning and continuous growth. So I always intentionally strive to keep myself relevant. For example, every 3 to 5 years, I go out and I go find some kind of certificate program or something that will increase my skills and knowledge, and something that I can apply, because I did have a strong influence in my family who believed in education and believed that that is the pathway to succeed. And I came from very, very humble means myself, and that was the pathway for me, and really what helped to pivot me in this position where I am today.
Oh, that is amazing. And before I transition to the next question, because all three of you stated something very important about being an advocate as well. Do all three of you have mentors still in your roles? How important has that been for you? Anyone?
It's been critically important for me along the way. There are women throughout the state and really beyond who have invested in my success, and I have an executive coach right now who's a female, and she has just been tremendous in helping me to be an advocate for myself, but also for me to think about how I'm advocating for others. So yeah, vitally important.
Very important. Anyone else want to speak on that before I ask the next question?
And what's interesting about my mentors is that they tend to shift and change depending on what my role is. I remember when I got my first assignment as president, I called my mentor and I said, hey, I'm having this challenge, and his response was, sorry, I didn't have that job. I can't help you. You might want to, talk to so-and-so. So our mentors change and they shift, and sometimes, it's good for us to continue to seek those support systems and be mindful of the fact that we need our mentors, but we're also going to need someone else who will open those gates for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to second
please.
all of this. So when I took on the role of president, I built into my hiring package an executive coach. And it's important that when you are negotiating, you negotiate your own professional development as well, whether that's a coach or something else, so that you have access to people who can help build your career. And it's really important to be someone who's going to challenge you and stretch you, not just make you feel good about where you already are.
Spot on. That executive coach is amazing. When I decided to take this leadership role in the financial industry, I asked for that. And that was the first time in my whole career, that I ever negotiated that executive coach. And I think that was a great segment to the next question. Yes. How can universities and colleges create more inclusive environments that support the advancement of women into leadership positions?
I think we have a real challenge. That really came out during our lunch conversation today, looking at what the future of work looks like, and working on campuses where historically we have needed to be face-to-face. A lot of the services that we have for students are face-to-face. And how we create a culture and opportunities to have more flexibility to be able to meet women where they are and where their needs are will be incumbent upon us. It's going to be a challenge, though, and I think it's going to be something tricky that we go through. I had the opportunity to sit, Chris Clark did a Future of Talent session up in Atlanta a few weeks ago, and he was projecting what the future of work is going to look like and what talent is going to expect. And I think higher education, we went from almost wholly face-to-face to wholly online, and then back to some sort of hybrid of the two, but how do we figure out how to do that in a way that is supportive of our employees and allows them to engage in the workplace in a meaningful way?
Spot on. Anyone else?
And I think we need to be a little bit more intentional when we're developing these programs. Because oftentimes, you know, there are leadership opportunities on our campuses. But when you think about some of the discussions, they are mostly generic, mostly tailored to maybe a more male type of environment. And the discussions that need to occur that's unique to women, it's often missing. So I think we need to have more of those programs that will address the issues, address the real issues that are impacting women in the workplace.
Thank you.
I also think we have to do the programs, but we also, it has to be modeled from the top down, and it has to have that personal component. And that's my big fear about the remote work experience, which I know could have whole other conversations about. Yesterday, I had lunch with faculty, staff, and students. I do a president's lunch table once a month, and there's a student there who is the head of our Student Government Association. And she's having a real tough time getting challenged in her first real political position. And we ended up just talking for about 45 minutes about how to handle that leadership challenge. That wouldn't happen as easily in a remote situation. And I think about this, you all may have heard that in higher ed, we're thinking a lot about the demographic cliff. Well, guess what? That's Georgia's leadership cliff in about 20 more years. And so the investment in creating those opportunities for people, we're going to feel it down the road, and it's part of why I believe in investing in it.
And the one thing that I thoroughly have enjoyed up to this point in how you're navigating through these processes and challenges or areas of opportunity. So the next question ties into that. What advice, right? What advice do you have for young women aspiring to obtain leadership in higher education roles, and what steps can they take to take advantage of it?
I think for women who aspire to be leaders, I think you really have to be intentional in your approach. You know, really discover what makes you want to get up in the morning, discover what your passion is, and bring your authentic self to work. And once you discover that, of course, it's going to be a steep climb, I will say this. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but if you have the passion for what you're doing, then it's going to not seem as arduous as, you know, it could be. And so that would be my number one advice. Find your passion and go for it.
I tell people three things. Number one, give up the idea that you will always be understood. Just let it go now. Number two, cultivate your inner voice. At the end of the day, I have to look at myself in the mirror and be able to live with the decisions that I made, and you're always going to have people who aren't happy with it. And three, cultivate a really good sense of humor. That is what's going to get you through the hard times, too.
And I would say, raise your hand, stand up, speak up. I think we were, again, talking during lunch. One of the things that I did early in my career, and I think it's part of how I got noticed for other opportunities, was I would always volunteer to take on some of the more difficult projects. And I've mentioned before, I really love to work, so that gives me a lot of joy and happiness to be able to take a problem and really kind of deconstruct it and then come up with a path forward. But I was consistently saying, oh, I'll do that. And so I think really stepping outside of yourself and where you feel comfortable to do things that are not in your comfort zone, but allowing yourself to learn and be a part of something bigger is going to be important. And I think we're seeing this from our college students and our graduates, is an expectations of where I'm going to be a year after graduation, 5 years after graduation, 10 years after graduation. And what my expectations were in terms of my career trajectory when I graduated from college are very, very different from what college students today. They think they're going to be heading into that C-suite really early. And I think there's also a level of humility that comes with being a seasoned professional And I think it's important for our young women to recognize that there's a lot that you know, there's a lot that you don't know, and you should use this time in your career to observe others, to engage with others, but not to have the expectation that as soon as you walk out the doors of your institution that you're going into a management or a leadership role. So I think managing expectations and raising your hand, volunteer for the hard things, because anybody who's out there volunteering and willing to put in the work, that's gold. You're going to get asked over and over to engage.
Couple of things. The first thing I heard, the generation, I call them the microwave generation, quick and fast. They just want to get up and go be the CEO. They don't want to work. I have a 24-year-old, and I tell her all the time, the world doesn't work the way you microwave that dinner. You're going to have to work for it. It's not easily satisfied. So I do share that, but I heard some key words, and I want to share them. Dr. Ingrid said, be authentic, be true to yourself, right? Dr. Catherine said, laugh at yourself sometime, have a little humor. That's amazing. And Dr. Stewart said, be uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable so you can stretch. That's what stood out to me. Because when you become uncomfortable, you can laugh at yourself, but you also can stay true to yourself. Okay, I pulled that together. That was pretty good. All right, I like that. Did y'all like that? I like that. Okay. All right. All right, so we're going to have a little more fun. All right, so in the beginning of our conversation, we talked about that life balance. So I really want to hear from all three of you because I think you go help me too. How do you balance work and your personal life?
So a couple of things. First of all, you don't. That's another one of those things you just have to accept. But let me backtrack for a second because I think that question is really interesting. And the reason I think it's interesting is because this is a question that women get. It is rarely a question that men get about how they are balancing their personal lives and their, but that's also reality. And so I think, as you progress up, and I'm going to steal from Ingrid because I sat on a panel with her back in the fall, I think, of other USG presidents, and she made the comment, and I think this is emblematic of where we are. And she said, presidents get paid more, but it's not like they're depositing that money into their bank account. They're actually using that money to buy time so they can work more. And so when you're sitting in our seats, you are paying someone to pick your kids up from school, to take them to their after-school activities. You're paying somebody to clean your house every 2 weeks, somebody to do your yard. These are all things I'm capable of doing. I don't have the time. And so the salary that I get, really, I use that to go and buy the time of other people so I can go work some more. And so I think that it's really, this is not an easy question to answer, but I think it's important to recognize that sometimes I'm also buying time to spend with my daughter. Sometimes it's so that my husband and I can go grab dinner. But luckily in these jobs, we can bring our families along with us. And so we're very fortunate in that way. The past 2 nights I've had events. My husband and I have gone to eat dinner beforehand, and then we've gone to the event. And so it's trying to blend those two things. But I will promise you, you're never balanced, because when you are working, you are not with your family. And when you are with your family, you are not working. And so there's not this balance that you get to achieve. So I think there's a misnomer out there that we can achieve work-life balance, but I think you've got to prioritize what's most important in any given moment, and that's where you are.
Yeah, I would say I'm not interested in balance because it doesn't exist. I'm interested in self-determination. And there was a period of my life for 15 years, the beginning of my career, all the way through becoming department chair. I was a single mother. For a chunk of that time, I worked 3 jobs. So it hasn't always looked like what I'm living now. And I did that so that I could determine my own future. And it's why I believe in education. I think that makes it possible for our students. I also worked really hard to create as much financial independence as possible so that if I had to walk away from a position because I had to take a stand on something, I could do that. And I wasn't always able to do that. Not everybody can always do that. But for me, the worst situation in a position is not a balanced situation. It's feeling stuck. Like, I have to do this to take care of my family. And so for me, I would trade out the word balance for self-determination, and that's looked different for me over my life, but that's been the priority.
These are all good answers, by the way, and I don't know that I can say anything else that can resonate with our audience. But I think we all need to give ourselves some grace at some point and understand that we all, at different points in our life, have different challenges, and we're at different phases, you know. So there are times when, you know, we might need to spend more time with our families. We need to be there more for them. And then there are times when, you know, our young adult children don't want us around, and so we work a little bit more. So we go through different phases and stages of life, and I'd say embrace where you are and, you know, be your best and do your best whatever that might mean for you. Because oftentimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and say we need to have it all or we need to do it all, otherwise we're not successful, and that's so not true. It is absolutely not true. I had an opportunity to be an outsider looking in as far as my daughter, who was at my investiture, and she spoke. And what she remembered mostly was me sitting on the sidelines, and I had no idea she was watching me. I thought she was practicing. Me sitting on the sidelines during her soccer game, and I had my GMAT book with me, and I was poring over that book, and she saw me. But at that point in time, you know, school is important. Professional development has always been important for me, but it was also important for me to be there for my daughter. So just give yourself grace and understand that oftentimes we have to, you know, try to adjust in some ways so that we can create the best scenario for ourselves.
So what I just heard, we had to learn how to navigate through our life.
Yes.
I thought, as you all were speaking, I made a statement in my head. I will determine daily who will get 100% of me. If it's 100%, if it's the job, or my husband, or my daughter, and then the others may only get 80, 50, and depending on how I'm feeling, somebody may not get anything. And that's when I give grace. Very good. I love your answer. So we're going to get away with all that balance and stuff. We just going to say we're going to learn how to navigate.
There you go.
Let's say navigate. Navigate. There we go. Well, first of all, thank you all for spending time with us. Let's give Dr. Ingrid, Dr. Catherine, and Dr. Stewart a round of applause.